Hey guys, what's up? This is FalseBulls123 and welcome back to my channel. Give me 1 second. Hello. It is not playing on it. They probably turned off because I haven't been using them. Anyway, give me a second. My brain is very smart and very good at what I do. How you doing? 1 moment. No, it's not doing anything. Okay, so I'm fucking around with my screen. Twitch Studio finally kicked the bucket, so now I'm on OBS, so all the nice looking, quotation marks, screens I have don't work no more, hey. So what is this video? Hi, so my name is Ryan James. I go online by FalseBulls123. I have a YouTube channel, I have a Twitch stream, I have a blog. I feel like I'm not posting enough on any of those. And I realize that, like, I'm not a professional content creator. This is something I do as a hobby. It's something I do for fun. It's something that I try to have a very healthy relationship with. But at the end of the day, I still feel bad when I'm not actually completing the project I set out to do. You know, if my hobby was sewing or knitting, and I always had a bunch of works in progress, I'd feel bad. So here's kind of the vibe for this video. I kind of just want to give you a refresher of where I am in life, what I'm doing, kind of some of the reasons why I haven't been posting on YouTube, and then I'm basically, for makeup work, going to do a wrap-up of the last 3 months, I guess, for my Boolean blog. We get it. So this is kind of a syncretic video. This is me kind of playing around. This is fun. So, if you're watching on Twitch, say hi in the chat, and if you're watching on YouTube, do something with your hands. Not that. Ew, stop it. Ew. Anyway, what first? Where have I been in life? So, this year, 2024, has been me just trying to do a lot of, like, life improvement stuff. I've been hitting the gym, I've been working on my career, I have 2 whole jobs now, so I'm very busy. And this is also one of the reasons why I am filming an ad-lib video, is because I will not have the time or energy to do anything past, like, this afternoon. Because I'll be working constantly. Okay, we get it. Yes. Ryan, couldn't you have done this while you were unemployed? Shut up. Anyway. So, that's pretty much where I'm in my life. I'm just kind of trying to do life shit. That's what always happens. And let's talk now about kind of some of the ideas I've had for my channel. So as you know, I've been doing video essays. I really like that. I like writing essays. I like doing research. I like having ideas about something. Sometimes I'll see something and be like, huh, I kind of want to sit down and explore that more thoroughly, right? I want to sit down and do a bunch of reading and get a bunch of cool smart people books and read them and annotate them and do shit. And so that's usually kind of my impetus, kind of my inspiration for making video essays. And the roadblocks I've been having is that I look up to so many of these video essayists who are just really cool, really amazing, making basically visual art. And I want to do that, but also I don't have the expertise, resources, production, or knowledge that they do. I'm not a producer. I try my best, but it's really fucking difficult. And so I have an idea for a production, and I'm like, I want to do this, and then I never have the actual energy or inclination to buckle down, put my nose to the grindstone, and actually make that happen. Because it is a lot of work for some of the ideas I have, and being a content creator is work. That is really the honest truth of it. And so that's where I'm being stymied. I guess I could always compromise on my art and, you know, just make a really standard sit-down video. But the thing that's really important to me in content creation is that I'm using this to push myself. I'm using this as a growth opportunity. I always want to have a project in which I say, today, we're doing something you ain't never done before. So I just made, for example, I made this vest. Can you see it? If you can't, that's too bad. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, I didn't know how to make welt pockets, and the pattern I had lied to me, lied like a liar. Excuse me? I was gonna name and blame, like, the pattern people. Singularity, I don't remember the fucking name of the pattern. Basically, it just had flaps. So I looked at a tutorial, I learned how to make single welt pockets. It's honestly not that difficult. People really hype that shit up. And that's kind of the same thing with these video essays. So I'm not going to show you my drive because you don't need to see this shit. What are the essays I have that I'm working on? What's the vibe? What am I doing to, like, make it happen, right? So pretty much the first two I've had just sitting for years is part 2 and 3 of the Johnny the Walrus series. If you don't know that, I wrote a really interesting video essay, in my opinion, of this really awful kids book, if you can even call it that, right? Really awful kids book called Johnny the Walrus. And sorry, I'm blanking. I'm not going to edit this, so I'm sorry for that. Take a shot, guys. Anyway, Johnny the Walrus, terrible children's book. I wrote this first essay talking about how it is not a good children's book, right? It doesn't have a lot of the technique children's book writers employed. It doesn't read well. It isn't interesting. It's just a cheap joke, right? And I raised 2 other questions I wanted to answer in further videos because I was really inspired by just the entire concept of this fucking political bullshittery, right? So the second one is basically exploring LGBTQ as a genre label, right? So when a book is in a store and it's labeled LGBT, what does that mean, right? What books get to be LGBTQ? What books don't? What does that, like, you know, really cash out as? And so ultimately the plan is that because there's really no journalism or academic study that I could find on the subject, at least specifically to the use of it as a genre label, I thought it'd be really important to, one, talk to an editor, somebody that actually approves books for marketing, and to talk to a librarian, because those are the kind of the 2 aspects of how books are sorted, right? It's either somebody putting a book in a bookstore or it's putting a book on a shelf. And so it was basically, I want to interview 2 people, if not more, get their opinions, kind of start to understand better of how they visualize and understand that sentiment. And it mostly involves me just actually tracking down somebody who will be willing to do a weird interview about a niche subject for no money. I guess I could give them money. I have money now. We'll see how this goes. Part 3, which is Johnny the Walrus, is exploring the literal politics of the book. So, if you don't know, Johnny the Walrus, if you haven't seen my video on it, is basically about minor trans healthcare. So, healthcare for children, specifically trans whatever, right? And there's a lot of disinformation about that. There's a lot of everything. And so the essay, which is pretty much completely written, I could absolutely produce it at this moment, is basically in 2 major parts. The first one is a philosophical look at gender models in society. It's interesting, but it's very boring to describe. And chapter 2 of the essay is essentially a very, very, like, well, I don't want to say well-researched, I don't want to toot my horn like that. It is an incredibly specific, cited, and thorough look at what trans healthcare actually looks like if you're a child, right? What ages do they do things? What is it like? What is the consensus model? And so I basically go through that. I explain it all. I cite everything. And I don't necessarily think it's a perfect work, but it is, I think, a very good primer on the subject. It's something that I worked very, very hard in this essay to really just get my words right. It's probably something that I've drafted more than any of my other essays, because I really needed this information to be accurate, thorough, and nuanced, right? And that essay basically ends with me doing a Vox Pop interview, where I actually talk to, like, trans people and say, hey, what is your experience with this, right? What is it like? Because kind of the main point of that is that the Johnny the Walrus book is something that's absolutely marketed towards parents that definitely have, I hate the phrase, reasonable concerns, right? Like, they don't understand something, and generally parents are acting within a good, like, you know, good faith. And so it's an essay that's very much speaking directly to those parents, saying, okay, clearly this book exists within some emotional response, right? So this book is speaking to something, otherwise it wouldn't have a market. So my essay is speaking to that same market. I'm saying, okay, let's actually look at your concerns, look at your fears, and see what answers we can find. And so I think a big part of that is actually talking to trans people, saying, hey, what is it like transitioning? Would you have wanted to transition at an earlier age? What would that have looked like for you? Right? Things like that. So that's basically the main one, two that I've had already written. Another completed script that I have that I need to produce is Finding the First Gay Kiss. It is a humongous project. It is my longest essay at around 50 plus pages. Basically, I had insomnia one night. I looked up and said, hey, when was the first time the two same-sex people kissed in a movie, like in a gay way, right? And then I watched all the movies. I watched 150 movies between 1895 and 1971, and basically this essay is a 1, primer on queer cinema, 2, exploration of like various trends of queer media. Like it's basically a crash course in early queer cinema. That's really the only way to describe it. I literally just wrote the celluloid closet over. I'm making a joke. I'm not, God, old fucking reference. I'm not James Somnerton. Obviously, the celluloid closet plays a important, resource within my research for it. I will say a lot of the movies I've watched were not even mentioned in the celluloid closet, and a lot of the movies mentioned in the celluloid closet I did not watch, right? It was very much me doing a lot of organic research and trying to make my own conclusions. I am a very big fan of Vito Russo. I definitely do want to explore more of that, but I also want to say that it's not me simply rehashing consensus. This was me doing a lot of, not on the ground, but me really digging up as much as I could find about all of the movies I watched. So it's really interesting. It's a really fun question, and at some point I'm going to put on a suit and do it like a Brian David Gilbert Unraveled video, because that's kind of the vibe, and I just need some time to set up everything for that. Have you seen it, Brian? I need to print so much fucking paper for that. It's 150 movies. That's at least 20. It's a production. That's the thing. So at some point I will film that. It will be my magnus opus. I will love it. Other sort of general ideas, at least I'm just going to read off the ones that I've actually written a script page for. So this is generally simply an introduction. I'll go from furthest written to least furthest written, I guess. So, probably the most cohesive is God's Not Dead, answering the atheism question, which is basically me looking into, the philosophical arguments in the God's Not Dead movie, which I'm deeply interested in. So it'd be me both exploring atheistic questions, for instance, there's... God, I can't remember anything off the top of my head, right? You've seen the movie. Basically, it's me exploring that. I'm using biblical analysis. I'm using biblical theology, apologetics, all that. But I'm also using, atheistic things. I'm mostly just exploring these questions in good faith and talking about some of my favorite philosophical ideas around theology. And basically, what's stopping me from really going gung-ho on this is that I kind of do need to read Nietzsche. It's kind of weird, because when you first watch the God's Not Dead movie, you're like, okay, this is just a cash grab. It's not actually about Nietzsche, but then I watch it and I'm like, actually, I kind of want to read Nietzsche a little bit more in depth. I kind of want to understand him better, because I feel like even if it wasn't entirely intentional, they are playing there are Nietzschean tropes within this work. It's interesting. It's something I want to explore. Basically, I'm waiting to have some time to get into the bookstore and order, the gay science. It's a whole thing. That's a project I'm still researching. The other one, Cinema Sins, a movie critic introspective, is mostly me just talking about the vague concept of movie criticism And that's just me going to go off like in a little rabbit hole about my own thoughts on it, and how movies should be critiqued, and how movies can be critiqued, and why, and like how their version of movie criticism affects my generation of critics. Anyway, and then this is definitely the most polemic. I haven't actually done any of the research for it, but this is a really fun idea. The last one in my scripts folder is an exhaustive look at Harry Potter controversies. So, obviously, J.K. Rowling is a bigot and a terrible person, and we don't stan. But I think that it gets to this point where I'm deeply fascinated with her as a writer, because obviously the way that you world build exhibits biases about you as a person, right? Can we look at controversial, problematic, or, you know, other sort of like difficult aspects of somebody's written work and intuit how they might feel about certain things? If there's some kind of, it'd be interesting. It's like, were there signs there, or were there not signs, or was this something that we've seen her grow progressively on, or something? You know what I mean? I don't want to necessarily be entirely negative. It is me being shitty to J.K. Rowling for clout, but like, obviously we always want to approach things in like as much good faith as possible. So that would be exploring every single basically controversy within the Harry Potter universe, not any of her work outside of it, right? And that would also include, like, I guess, other tie-ins, like a theme park or something. I don't know, I haven't really worked through it, because I want to explore the Cho Chang thing, I want to explore the racist goblin thing, I want to explain, like, all the really messed up tweets and, like, the queer baiting and just all of it, right? I want to explore this and say, this is interesting, right? And just kind of have a very, like, I don't necessarily want to be, like, I don't want to go into the work saying, oh, Harry Potter sucks, and you just didn't realize it because you were a dumb child. I definitely want to have a measured approach to it, right? I want to say, okay, even now that I look at this and I realize there's flaws, I realize there's things that I don't like. I don't like how a lot of very flimsy the world building is at times. Why do people like it, right? And I always want to I hate going into a media and saying, this is stupid, this is dumb, you're bad for liking this. I want to understand what people connect with in a work. Even if something isn't for me, I want to understand why people like it. You get it. And that's a big thing for me, I think, in media analysis. So, now that we've kind of gone through that, it's been how many minutes? It's been 17 minutes. That's pretty good. I did try an earlier version of this video where I did basically the same thing, and it was a lot like my, I've done a few car vlog-ass videos. I like them. I don't think anyone else does, because they're kind of boring, but they're fun to make. Anyway. So, basically, I'm going to be going through everything I've watched in the last 3 months, and that's basically what I've been doing on my Boolean blog. So, the Boolean blog is something I started around 2017, I think? Yes. When I was editing the podcast database wiki. If you're weirdly into wiki lore, yes, I am that False Bulls 123. If you edit it, that was me. So I started a blog on there because there was nothing in the blog spot, and I felt like propagating it. And when I moved back into Medford in 2020, I started up my blog again. I started blogging. I was incredibly prolific for a year in 2020, and I've just been doing about a monthly blog since. I think I really need to conceptualize how much energy I want to put into the blog, how much I actually need to do it, because if I'm being honest, one of the reasons why I keep up my blog is mostly just so that it's active, because I am on a couple, like, PR lists for film distributors. They'll offer me, like, critic screenings, and so I wanted, I don't want to, like, necessarily lose that momentum as a reviewer. I think I really need to consider, like, I think the big issue for me is that I'll blog on other sites. I have a Tumblr that I've been blogging on recently for adult film reviews, which is really fun. And obviously I blog a lot on Letterboxd. I think the main thing for me is that I have a very high standard for the quality of writing that I put on my Boolean blog. At least I used to. And so I wonder if I should be putting more casual, non-intentional things on there, right? So that's really something that I need to kind of think about. Think about actually producing content that I'm enjoying, using the blog in a way that is fun, that I'm not stressing out over. It's always a battle. I like blogging, I like writing, I do it a lot, but I've definitely moved my impulse for writing into other venues, and that's kind of an issue for my baby, my little Boolean blog. So this is basically going to be what this month is, because I don't have time for anything. So just to show you how difficult, show you how this works. So I have a series on the blog where I'm basically watching things I reference within the first year of my blog. This sounds so stupid. Basically, I would write every week. I would write a review. It would change, and I have to explain this whole system. God damn it. Okay, let's start from the top. 2020, I made. Holy shit! How many? Yeah. No, I did math wrong. I made 54 articles during the year 2020. Once a week, you get it. And they were reviews, and they switched categories every week. So every month, I would do a review for a movie, a TV show, a podcast, and a mobile game. You got it. You found it. Beautiful. And so at the end of the year, I was looking at my writing style, and I had realized I really referenced a lot of things that I had never seen before. And that was actually a very big issue I had in my early review days, and this is something we would get into in the CinemaSins video, right, is that I was referencing work that I had not necessarily seen. I only had an interpretation of from pop culture. So it'd be like, oh, this is kind of like, ooh, The Purge movie, there we go. I blanked. It's like, this is kind of like The Purge movie, this is kind of like Paranormal Activity or something, and I had not seen those movies, so like, how the fuck would I know? I was merely listening to what people said about films, and some of that was what CinemaSins said about films, right? I was basing my critique on other people's opinions, and that's not good. That's not what you should do as a critic. I think it's really difficult as an early critic not to do things like that, because let me try to explain. The point of criticism is that you're somebody that has a wide breadth of knowledge. You're somebody that has a lot of insight, a lot of perspective on whatever you're watching. And so part of criticism is to watch a lot of different things, watch really loved movies, watch very specific genres and micro-genres, because it gives you a level of comparison that the average person won't. For instance, when I watched The Blair Witch Project, I understand this is found footage, right? But when I watch it, the first thing I immediately noticed, like literally, when I was watching The Blair Witch Project, the first thing I thought of was about mumblecore. If you don't know what that is, in the 2000s, there was a style of indie directors and indie movies that were really interested in essentially fictional cinema verite. It's kind of hard to describe. Basically, there was this movement called Dogma 95, made by Lars von Trier. We know him. He's a misogynist. Anyway. And basically the idea is that we want to make movies that are like the opposite of Hollywood nonsense. We want to make movies about real people with naturalistic dialogue and naturalistic camera work. It's going to be completely improvised. There's going to be no fantastical elements, so on and so forth. You can look it up. And so watching Blair Witch Project, I'm noticing the improv, I'm noticing the amateur camera work and the completely improvised dialogue. Blair Witch is a almost completely improvised film. Really interesting, really cool. Look into the production. And so I watched this and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of artistic ideas in this that I haven't really seen from a lot of the other found footage movies. There are what's called mumble gore films, things like Creep or Do You Like My Basement or Cat for Anne. those I would classify as mumblecore that have a similar artistic styling, but most found footage films do not have those qualities. They are not made within that kind of movement or artistic style. And so it was really interesting watching Blair Witch because of that. If I'm somebody who doesn't know what Dogma 95 is, or has never seen a mumblecore movie, or doesn't watch indie films, I wouldn't have that perspective. And so being a critic kind of means you have to watch a lot of things, because you need to have something that you can kind of pull out of your hat. You can have something that you can relate a film to. It helps you better understand films within context, right? And so, now that we've done with the lecture, basically for the blog, that's what I was doing. I was taking all these movies I hadn't seen, all these random stuff I hadn't watched, and I'm like, okay, fine, we're watching it. We're watching... Fucking... Give me a second. What the fuck is that show called? The one where everyone dies in it, and the Game of Thrones, thank you. It's like, we're watching Game of Thrones, we're watching True Blood, we're watching The Purge, right? We're watching all these things that, like, I mentioned in passing that I've never consumed. And so far, I've listened to all of the podcasts, I've played all the video games that I promised I'd play, and I'm slowly getting through the TV shows and movies. Just for a quick update, so you can hold me to it, I have consumed... Let's see, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have about 9 films I need to watch that's left, and that includes all of the Suicide Forest films. Don't ask me what that is. And then I have a whole fucking list of, like, TV shows. These are all TV shows. I've watched, like, 5 of these. Anyway, so that's the process. Basically, now that that's out of the way, let me explain what I do every month. So I've been trying for this whole Boolean blog watch list to watch at least one piece of media a month so that we can actually make some progress on it. I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm so slow at it. And you're like, okay, Ryan, how do you do that? Well, this month I watched You. I'll talk about it in a minute, but let me show you how that works. So ignore all of the smut on my screen. I'm so glad I cleared my browser, because I was literally researching a video, like an adult film the other day. So, for instance, if I wanted to do it, this is not the page I wanted to show you. Here we go. This is the literal multiple spreadsheets I made in 2020. I have more than... Oh my god, what is this? No, shut up. I hate this. This version of Excel is ad-supported. How about you ad-support these balls? Okay, well, I guess we can't see it. In this little corner that is being cucked by capitalism, you can see the name of a game that I've played, a name of a game, whether or not I've played it, thank you, God, and this little index number. And you're like, Ryan, did you just hard code a database in a spreadsheet? And the answer is no, I don't understand how to use SQL. Basically, I have these index numbers rather, and these literally refer to the post number of my blog, right? So the first post I ever made is post 1, the 52nd post I ever made is post 52. So I have to look at this the show I watched, You, which is post 50. Ryan, where is this index you have? You wrote an index, right? Clearly it's there. We understand database management. I hand wrote it. I hand wrote it in a planner from 4 years ago, and usually I can just use my, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Search feature on my blog, where I can just type in the name of the show and it will come up. But if it's something like the singular word you, that's in the English language a bunch, so I have to go find it in this goddamn thing. So, looking through this, finding out things, dear lord, it keeps going. Okay, so we are learning that, oh, that makes a lot of sense, that the 50th article I ever wrote was for The Haunting of Hill House. Haunting of Hill House is, of course, the Mike Flanagan miniseries, which I really love. I still think it's one of... I haven't, like, rewatched it, but I still quite enjoy it. So let's see what was the context that I used this for. And this is what I do. You're watching me write an article in real time, honey. That's what's up. The Haunting of Hill House, a masterpiece in terror and drama. So we're looking through it, and I will just give you an example of why I had such a huge list after 1 year of writing articles. Novel adaptations are not a new concept. Whether it's Spear, 1998, Cujo, 1983, or even Under the Tuscan Sun, 2003, filmmakers have always found a way to take the literature they have enjoyed and create something which is a synthesis of both their author and the director's creative talents. God, why do I have to write like that? And then I mention even more adaptations. And here's the kind of the thing, is that if you don't have, like, stuff to draw from, you kind of have to draw a wide net. If I've never watched anything by Mike Flanagan, if I haven't watched a lot of things by Shirley Jackson, I'm probably not going to talk about those things. For instance, I don't mention either version of The Haunting. Actually, there is a 90s adaptation of The Haunting. It's confusing because there's The Haunting, which is The Haunting of Hill House, and then there is the Castle film House on Haunted Hill, and they both got a 90s remake. It's very confusing. Thank you. So I'm literally just scanning through this, and here we go. Victoria Pedretti was apparently in You. Do I know who she is? I don't remember her, but honestly, I didn't like the show that much, so that's probably why. And because of that throwaway bit about me saying where this actress is from, I get to watch this entire TV show. What's You about? Okay, we're getting into this. We're vibing. I have to leave in like an hour and a half. I don't have to, but I need to pick... You don't need to know more about my life. You're good. Okay. Okay, when people are talking outside my door. Anyway. So, You is basically, how to describe this? There's a guy, he's not like a serial killer, but he's definitely a stalker, and he gets into this weird stalker parasocial relationship that he has this constant internal monologue about, and he's like, oh baby, I'll do anything for you, and he's really creepy, right? But he's also hot, so it's cool, right? And that's pretty much the premise. It's creepy stalker guy. It's obsessed stalker fan. We've seen the plot. We've seen it before. I will say there is this really fantastic short story from the first season of No Sleep that I can't remember, but I really love. And I think plays it so well as like how horrific it can be. But basically, this is not really... This isn't a horror plot. This is a romance. And I don't want to say unironically, because here's lies within the rub. I don't think that the actions of the show necessarily condone the stalking. I don't think that they think he is a good person for doing this. I think it's meant to be like Dexter. That's really the comparison. It's meant to be like Dexter, where it's like, oh, he's a bad person, but he's an interesting anti-villain. And so I think it also really plays with the genre, right? There's a really famous quote that the characters don't know what genre they're in. And so the characters don't think they're in a horror genre, they think they're in a rom-com. And so there is, for me, this kind of post-2000s, not irony, maybe, what's what I'm looking at, postmodernism? Like, the film I keep saying film, the show feels at least somewhat self-aware about, like, you know, romance plots and manic pixie dream girls and, like, this kind of self-serving idea that a romantic partner is there to fix you. And so I think it definitely plays into this idea that these people do have a real relationship and that they have real problems and that they also both really fucking suck. I can't express this enough. Both of these people are kind of terrible. They're very, to me, unattractive as romantic partners because of their personalities. I don't like the ingenue main female lead. I find her to be kind of self-centered in a lot of ways. And so it's very interesting because I feel like they are playing with these tropes while also trying to be a thriller. And I definitely get why people like it. I think it can be a bit much for me to watch at the time. I would like to know how women feel about it. I feel like this is probably a show for women in some weird way, and I would like to know their vibes on it, because it just, I wasn't deeply in love with it. It is watchable. I'm sure it's bingeable. I binged it, but it's not necessarily something that I was super in love with. I'm just going to go for my reference items, my watch list items, I guess, because that's going to be easier. Last month, my show was Living Undocumented. This is from my article Cam, which I do love. Cam is the story of... Wow, I used to remember her actress's name. I really like her as an actress. I think she's a fantastic scream queen and she should be in more shit. Cam's the story of a cam girl called Lola Ackerman, rather. I can remember her name, apparently, but not her actress, who finds out that she has a double who is stealing her cam account, stealing her fans, and locking herself out of her livelihood. It is written by a director-writer team, which... Daniel Goldhaber and Isa Maisie and Daniel Goldhaber, who are actually somehow still making a remake of Faces of Death. I don't know how that would work because it's a documentary using real life footage, but like I'm very fascinated to see how that goes. And it's probably one of my favorite. Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite horror movies of the past couple decades. I think it's fantastic. Anyway, basically the guy who did the scoring for this also did the scoring for a mini-series called Living Undocumented. Living Undocumented is a 6-part mini-series which, as you can imagine, follows the lives of various American immigrants who are living undocumented in the United States. It does cover, like, quite a few people of, like, Latino and Hispanic origin, obviously, but it actually goes further than that to talk about a lot of different faces of undocumented citizens. I guess not citizens, but undocumented residents of the United States, right? And it's really, really fantastic. There are some moments in this documentary where I'm, like, legitimately flabbergasted. I guess it's really difficult separating documentaries, separating their text from their form, if that makes sense. Ultimately, you want to understand the politique and message of a documentary, but you also can't separate that from the entertainment value of a documentary. The way someone tells a story is as much part of the story as the story itself, right? And so I will say that it is a very informative and very heartfelt and poignant text, but it's also a very well-made documentary. It makes you feel things for people. It shocks you. I have a hard time saying that something confronts a viewer as a documentary, because it's not like I went out and like did a protest, right? I am a horrible centrist. You should kill me. Anyway, really fantastic work. I definitely recommend that you watch that, especially if you don't feel like you have a strong opinion on the immigration side of things in America. I think that it really helps to humanize and show a very nuanced light on a lot of subjects. I really enjoyed the documentary. It's a recommendation. The month before that, which July, which I also did not publish, I watched Arrested Development. Arrested Development is a early 2000s sitcom starring a lot of familiar faces that you've probably seen, like Michael Cena. Is that his name? The fuck is his name? The guy from Juno. Give me un momento. Juno. Yes, the 2007 film. Thank you. Michael Cera. Thank you. I was right. I don't know why my brain stopped working. Basically, Arrested Development, it's a riches to rags story like Schitt's Creek, where a whole family loses all their money, the dad goes to jail, and the one good child, straight man, good child, played by another famous man I can't think of and I'm not going to look up, you can do it yourself, basically has to be the sole breadwinner for a bunch of eccentric crazies. And it's fine. It's a perfectly serviceable sitcom. There's moments I enjoyed. The memes, the parts that became memes now make sense in context. It's one banana. How much could a banana cost, Michael? $10? There we go. We all know the bits. It's fun. I don't know necessarily if I love it. At some point, I think I should probably examine the show on a deeper level, but I'm not going to do that. It's... With sitcoms, I will say this. If I like a sitcom, I will have immediately seen the sitcom, right? What I'm saying is, if I like a sitcom, it's not that I will want to binge it, it's that I will be unable to stop. That sounds like I have a problem, and I do. I have a problem with laughing in love. Sorry that you can't be me. When I saw the first episode of Brain Time, Ryan, Brain Time... The Good Place, thank you. When I saw the first episode of The Good Place, the next thing I did was a week later and I had seen all 6 seasons, right? If I like a sitcom, I will binge it. And the show was fine. It was a bit long in my opinion. Sometimes a 21 episode season, sometimes that's too much for me. Sometimes I'm ready to go to sleep. But yeah, it's a perfectly fine show. The jokes are alright. I think the incest stuff was too much for me. I'm like, what is this serving? Is it funny or is it just taboo? Right? We get it. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Arrested Development. It didn't really hold much of an impression for me. I'll say that much. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about what I've watched over the last 3 fucking months. It's going to be easy because I've only watched you, and I'm probably not going to watch any more TV this month because I'm starting the Hooptober on the 15th. After that was Dead Boy Detectives 2024. This was made by Neil Gaiman, which is a whole thing right now. I'm not going to get into it. Basically, Neil Gaiman, Dead Boy Detectives, spin off the Sandman. We've seen the Sandman. We hate the Sandman. We love Dead Boy Detectives. It stars 2 ghost boys in a detective agency. You get it. Basically, they go to the Pacific Northwest, and they just have fun teenage shenanigans. It's a lot like Lockwood & Co. in a specific way, where you're dealing with teenagers. They're having a lot of really beautiful visuals, really gorgeous aesthetics, and it's this, like, Scooby-Doo-esque energy. We love Scooby-Doo. We love beautiful aesthetics. It's just... The best way I can describe this film is there's a single shot where they're playing, like, MCR, and this girl is, like, standing on a ledge with, like, the Doc Martens with these, like, stickers on them, impractical, like, looming over the expanse, and I'm like, I love it, right? It's like Supernatural for teens and Scooby-Doo for adults. It's entirely my aesthetic. It's hot, it's queer, it's a fun time. It was entirely a comfort show when I was at a really shitty job. After that, I watched Sense8 by the Wachowskis, 2015, ran for 2 seasons. Sense8, if you don't know what it's about, is a sci-fi thriller, maybe? Basically, imagine Heroes, but more queer and more sexual. Yeah, so basically, each episode revolves around 8 different people. Let me count. 8 people. Basically, it follows 8 different people in, like, all these giant cities in the world who are all ESP mind connected to each other. They can literally feel what the others are feeling. They can talk to these people, like, instantly. Shit like that. And it just plays off of this concept. And each of the people's... That's not grammatical. Each of the person's various struggles in their life, right? It's like one goes to prison, one's a gay actor in Mexico City, one's, like, you know, a cop in Boston. So they all have a different kind of plot lines, their different struggles, and as the story progresses, stuff happens. Definitely gives, like, OG Heroes, like, first couple season vibes. We love to see it. So that was everything in freaking July. I don't know why I never finished this article. I watched 3 shows back that month. And this is where we get to, the really, really, long bit. I watched a lot of television in August because I was unemployed. So, let's get into it. I watched every single episode of Black Mirror. I'm not going to get into every episode of Black Mirror, so let me see if I can sum this up. Black Mirror obviously is the highly critically acclaimed anthology science fiction movie strand. They're basically movies, right? Each episode is like feature length. It's its own concept, showing a interesting take on like a dark, not necessarily always, but like a dark sci-fi future, right? It's like this one episode where everyone has this star rating system, like that one really good episode of Community where Britta gets mustard on her face. I told you I like sitcoms. There's one where, God, there's a few really fantastic ones that I just can't think of because there were 6 fucking seasons. A lot of the seasons are very small, actually. There's like only 3 or 4 episodes. And the episode quality changes in length a lot. People really love Season 1 and hate Season 2 and 3. I actually think Season 2 and 3 are kind of the sweet spot for me. I'm not going to rank them. Let me just look up Black Mirror and I'll give you which ones I liked, pretty much. How about that? Because there were some... I also say, I guess, trying to remember my criticisms of the show, I feel like a lot of the show had a vaguely misogynistic quality at times. How to explain that? There was a lot of stories in which women were uniquely punished for, like, some kind of transgression, and it was always very much focused on the suffering of that woman. And so I'm like, at times it felt very much not the vibe. I'm thinking, I believe, what is the one I'm thinking of? White Bear would probably be the main one, but there's other ones. Waldo also kind of goes into some nice guy energy, you know what I mean? It's a whole thing. So just to take a quick look, what is going to be my top recommendations for Black Mirror? 50 million credits is obviously going to be up there. I know that's crazy. 50 million credits, no one likes that one. Give me a second. 50 million credits is fantastic. Shut Up and Dance is pretty good. San Winipur is obviously fantastic. I also did like the ending of Season 3, Man Against Fire, and Hated in the Nation. I found this to be really, really enjoyable. Crocodile, I think, does really well. Hang the DJ, I really enjoyed. And I'll also say Metalhead and Black Mirror was pretty good as well. I liked Joan is Awful, and honestly, I do like whatever the newest season is. I will say, though, I think it really kind of lost the plot. I think it really missed what the intention of Black Mirror was meant to be. Black Mirror's like, oh, it's us examining our relationship to technology, right? Black Mirror is looking at technology when it isn't doing what it's supposed to, right? The Black Mirror. You get it. So after I watched that, I was sad. No. I watched Carol and the End of the World, which is a animated series about a woman dealing with the literal end of the world. The world's dying. It sucks. What you gonna do about it? And it's kind of wonderful because it's just about a depressed woman that wants normalcy. She just wants to go to happy hour after work and spend time with her friends. And I think that it was definitely one of the more enjoyable and wholesome interpretations that is existential dread. I'm going to move on. I like the show. Watch it. Also, it is like probably for adults, so deal with that. Mindhunter. Mindhunter is basically a historical drama set in the early days of the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI. Basically, it's dealing with the people that set up this whole concept of profiling, which is utilizing psychological traits as a way of identifying and coding criminal behavior. That makes sense. And it's pretty good. It reminds me a little bit of... Ooh, what was that show called? Yeah, sorry. The series I was thinking of was literally just called Criminal. It was a anthology series which had... Okay, so I'm trying to remember the entire plot line. There we go. Basically, Criminal was an anthology series. It had 4 different like versions of it based on like different countries, and I watched all of them, and it was essentially interrogation procedural dramas. So you would get someone in the interrogation room, and the crime story would evolve from that. So it has some of that energy. There's a lot of like interviewing serial killers and the actual procedural aspects of like police work. It's really interesting. I also think it has some interesting, like, you know, representation of 70s queer life, which is kind of cool. Surprise gay rap, we love that. Moving on, Black Summer Season 2. I really love the original Black Summer. It is one of my favorite zombie shows of all time. No one's ever seen it, and the people that do apparently don't like it. Apparently, it is a hot take to like Black Summer. It is set as a prequel for World War Z. No. Z Nation. I always mix that up. So, prequel for Z Nation, but like early prequel, right? It's basically set in the early... You get it. And it's very totally different. But I love it. I think the original season is just amazing in its cinematography. It really... The best way to describe Season 1 of Black Summer is that it's like an 8-hour chase scene. It's like someone is being chased for 8 hours, and it's just amazing how well you can capture something that's constant running, constant action, constant tension, and still manage to have that story work. It's a masterclass, I think, in essentially thriller editing. Hitchcock would be proud. Season 2 is, honestly, for me, hot garbage. It has some of the stylistic and aesthetic qualities of the original season, but I think it really fails on a lot of editing. I think it's really confusing in like a narrative aspect. There's a lot of jumping around in the plot that they don't necessarily explain very well. I think the main character was very flanderized. I think that she just became a bad person. Like, obviously, in a zombie narrative, we're working with gray morality. There are no heroes, there are anti-heroes. There are no villains, there are anti-villains, right? It's like we're all meeting in the middle, we're doing what we need to survive, right? I think that a lot of the show loses the intentionality for me. The Season 2 I'm speaking of. There's so much from Season 1 that is amazing and gut-wrenching and just gags you. And then you watch Season 2 and you're like, baby girl, we've seen that show with the zombies, Walking Dead. Thank you. You're just trying to do that, but like with some art house editing. I also really dislike how they portrayed Sun in Season 2. So I believe I'm going to get this wrong because I'm disgusting. So basically, in Season 1, there is a character named Woo Kyoung-sung, right? Hopefully I pronounced her name right. And she goes by Sun because white people can't pronounce that, right? And she just really doesn't know a lot of English or has some difficulty speaking it, so she speaks all of her lines in Korean. No one really understands her, and that's kind of a point of the thing. Is like, you know, how do you be friends with someone you can't speak with? And so it plays into some of the drama. It's a really poignant aspect of her character, and they still give her space, right? Like, the narrative is still interested in who she is and what she has to say, even if the audience can't understand those words. There's this really fantastic moment, I think in episode 6 of Season 1, where she has an entire monologue, and you just don't know what she says. You look it up and it's about her, like, having what she wants most of the world is to have lunch with her mother. Like, it makes sense thematically, but, like, it feels very poignant. Like, she's a fantastic actress. And in this Season 2, she spends the entire season, I'm not even joking, the entire season as a prisoner of war, literally tied behind the main guy who is, like, Arabic or Middle Eastern. And that I don't know, something about them, it's like, so you're giving me the villain being like an angry Middle Eastern militant guy. It rubs me the wrong way, and I'm just like, and the other thing in like racial imagery is, you're going to take the only Asian woman, make her a prisoner of war, make her in an implied, right? Like, maybe don't put your Asian women in chains in a post-apocalyptic setting, right? Like, you get where I'm coming from here, right? You get how that's, like, kind of an unfortunate implication of the setting. And so I'm like, maybe don't code your only Asian empowered character as a comfort woman. Thank you. I'm just going to explicitly say that's the imagery it gives. And I really, really hated that, because she literally just doesn't get... She just literally gets, like, sidelined for an entire season when she's one of the more interesting characters in the entire show. So, personal beef. Next up was, I watched Night Flyers. Night Flyers is a 10-part miniseries science fiction about a dying Earth and a colony spaceship going out to make first contact. It's interesting. It's giving some of those, like, early 2000 sci-fi shows, like Stargate or something. I think it's good enough for what it is. Do you like The Expanse but wish that it had a slightly lousier script? There we go. It has sex and science fiction and robots and really cool costume design. The costume design is really good. I don't have much to say about that. It's a bog standard sci-fi show. Lastly was American Vandal, which is basically made for people that have beef with cereal. If you are watching this on YouTube, please watch my vlog on me watching cereal for the first time, because, yeah. Cereal, obviously, and I don't know if it was ever mentioned explicitly within the text. It is very clear that that is what they are referencing. So, if you don't know... Ooh, let me double check the timeline. Research in real time. Point of view. You're watching me research in real time. Okay, hold on. Serial Podcast first season. Oh my god. Season. It has 4 seasons. Oh my god. Shut up. When did the first episode come out, Google? When did it come out? 2014, thank you. Yeah. So in 2014, Serial by NPR was a true crime podcast exploring the disappearance and death of a schoolgirl in 1999. Hopefully I didn't repeat too much of that. And basically the way that the podcaster talks, the way she examines evidence, the way she'll go into these kind of like personalizing, like, cold opens. All the format of that show was essentially very influential to a lot of other creators. So the Serial podcast really... It didn't create docuseries, it didn't create documentary podcasting, but it very much set the tone and form of a lot of podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts of all times, of which I have a hoodie that is completely worn out. You ever see it? Basically, the podcast is called The Black Tapes. If you don't know, I was a huge fan of it, and I never actually finished it, weirdly enough. I just really loved the first 2 seasons. That is very heavily inspired by Serial. So is all the other things that Terry Miles has done under that production label. So is, too, a lot of the other horror pod series. God, that's such a weird way to say it. Basically, not only did Serial create a lot of, like, regular, like, podcasts about documentaries and true crime, it created a entire format of fiction docuseries, right? So docuseries set in fictional universes. So things like The Black Tapes and Tanis and Limetown and Small Town Horror, probably a few others that I'm not even thinking about, utilize a lot of these aspects and ideas from the original Serial podcast. So the Serial format is very much something that is just really commonplace within docuseries, if that makes sense. And American Vandal is essentially a parody of that. It's using all of those quirks of Serial, all of the kind of... How to explain it? It's using those kind of cold opens. Like, in the original Serial podcast, it starts with this thing where it says, imagine what you were doing 4 months ago, and you can't. And it's like, then how do you expect this guy I'm interviewing to remember the day his girlfriend disappeared, right? Shit like that. And they do the exact same thing in American Vandal. They do a lot of other parts of it. It's hard to describe. Another big thing is that there is this part about Serial where she's essentially inserting herself into the narrative, right? Common documentary and, I guess, morals, code, ethics, whatever you want to call it, is the idea that a documentarian should be separate from their subject, that they should not get involved, right? And obviously you can break these rules at times or in places, but Serial was very much not only about learning about this thing, but also exploring it in real time. And with that comes the podcaster, this host, own relationship to the subject of her work. And so a lot of other stories play into that. They ask questions about the efficacy of it. Are you getting too involved? Are you starting to become biased? Are you starting to lose your objectivity to the work? And so there's also very much an exploration of how these characters in American Vandal are relating to the subject of their documentary. So you get what I'm saying. And there's a lot of, I'm not going to get too deep in the paint about the comparisons. What is American Vandal about? American Vandal, this is because it's a parody, is about 2 different seasons, 2 different types of crime. The first one is about a series, give me a second. The first season is about a graffiti attack where some unknown person sprays a bunch of dicks, like just cock and balls on a bunch of teachers' cars, right? And it's really freaking good. It's really interesting. It says a lot of really interesting things. And season 2 is also really good. Is about essentially a series of, I don't even know how to explain this. Season 2 follows the antics of the Poop Bandit, which is essentially a series of, obviously poop's involved. I'm just going to say terrorist attacks, right? Like, the first one is a poisoning. Like, they literally put laxatives in the school's lemonade, right? Like, there's just really horrific things involving human feces. And eventually it turns out that it's a lot more intense than you would expect. I mean, it already starts out with a mass poisoning where people shit themselves, but, like, it goes some really intense places. I will say that. And I think the thing that's really fascinating is that it's a work that is where the subject is inherently juvenile. It's something like, oh, it's like dicks and poop and like fart jokes and shit. But then they're taking it with an absolute gravity, right? They're taking it incredibly serious. And I think there was something really deeply fascinating about that. So, if you like comedy, if you like documentaries, if you have a complicated relationship with the 2014 seminal podcasting masterpiece, Serial, yeah, I would definitely recommend you watch it. So, that's everything I've watched in the last 3 months. This is basically going to be the mega haul for my Boolean blog, and also an update for my YouTube channel. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I'm not sorry that I haven't been around lately, but I do miss creating work. I do really enjoy writing essays and writing blog posts. And I just kind of need to find a way to actually make that something that is productive and enjoyable for myself. So, anyway, guys, feel free to comment, boost my engagement, do what the fuck you want. It's been so long, I've got my outro, so give me a second. Wash your hands, tell your loved ones you love them, and live every single day trying to be a better and better person. Okay, bye!